Everyone, I hope you guys are having a great Thursday. Today I'm going live with osteopath Ed Padget, and I'm super excited to have him on. Ed is a colleague of mine and just overall brilliant thinker in this space when it comes to lifestyle medicine. I can't express to you enough how great of an opportunity it is to listen to Ed here in this space. And today we're going to go through a case study and speak with him about how he would handle this particular mom, who many of you might be able to identify her symptoms and be able to kind of understand where she's coming from as far as being exhausted, burnt out, kind of living the first half of her motherhood experience on the edge of feeling very overwhelmed, tired all the time, and kind of just living from one moment to the next. And then now, once we get to the age of 40, feeling almost like the wheels are coming off the bus. And that's where a lot of the clients that come to me are and land in that space of where it's like, oh man, now I'm 40, the kids are in school, should be my time to kind of reconnect with myself, whether I go back to work or I start a business or, I reignite a craft. But health is a barrier to that and is causing more dysfunction than it is being helpful to them. And so when we talk about lifestyle medicine, once Ed joins us, we'll be able to discuss more about how we can identify some root causes. And I know that's a huge buzzword in functional medicine. I almost hesitate to use it, kind of like core was a big buzzword used in fitness. But when we think about root causes, you want to kind of think about it as addressing the soil rather than the symptom. And that's one of the main things that is a little bit different when you look at it from a holistic point of view versus kind of just looking at the symptom and trying to directly address the symptom. So hopefully we'll see Ed on here in just a minute, and then I will review the case with you. I might have to bump off and then come right back. Oh, here he is. Okay. So Ed, once you request to join, I will approve it. And then we can get started with our questions. If you guys have questions during this live, please go ahead and drop them in. And then I will be able to, either I or Ed will be able to answer them for you. So Ed, you would just hit request. Okay, here we go. And I got it. Be coming on, and then I will read to you our case. And then we can go through, we have a list of questions. Hey, Ed.
Okay.
Great. Well, it's good to see you.
And you. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I wasn't quite sure whether you request me or I request you.
Oh,
so I figured.
Got it. Well, great. Well, where are you at right now in the world?
Right now, I'm in Central America, a place called Nicaragua, and just enjoying the sun and the heat down here.
Wonderful. I mean, I personally just incredibly intrigued by all your posts. I'm like, oh man, I would love to do that. I would love to be there. So it's truly fascinating to see what you've created.
Thank you.
And of course, I came across your work from Julia Morcelli, a fellow colleague, many years ago. And then of course, I've just been blasting it to all of my clients over the years. And of course, recently shared one with you. Yes, and I'm just fascinated by your work. And we'll talk more about towards the end kind of what you do and all of the different program options that you have. But today I really want to try to identify, this client that we kind of talked about behind the scenes. And it's a very common collection of symptoms, unfortunately, and it's almost so common that it's considered the norm, disappointingly so. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to live much more freely in our world, but many moms especially are plagued by these symptoms. So I'll just read what I wrote to you, and then we can kind of spring off from there. So this is a typical middle-aged mom. She's 41 years old, 3 children, ages 12, 9, and 6. So one that's in middle school and the other 2 in elementary school if you're in the United States. And after having her 9-year-old, she had constant knee and back pain. Never really did anything about it, kind of went to traditional doctors. They said, oh, there's nothing really wrong. You need to lose some weight. You need to start exercising some more, but never really looked at like, How's your spine moving? Maybe it's pelvic floor. Didn't talk to her about delivery of babies. What's your nutrition look like? Sleep. So she once loved going to her group exercise classes because she enjoyed the camaraderie of the class and then also being led through exercise. But she had to give them up because she has no time to go to the gym now with 3 children. So she started cutting back more and more on activity because her back and knee pain is so significant. She now only walks occasionally at her kids' sports practices. So just a couple days a week around the track, around the fields. And she's starting each day with coffee. And she rarely eats before 11 because she says once the coffee hits, then she doesn't really need to eat anything. She feels like she's ready to go. But then at 11, she starts eating and she really can't stop snacking. So it's something like never really a meal. It's kind of little bits all throughout the day, like continually eating until about 9 o'clock at night. So about 10 hours of continual snacking. She's exhausted all the time, frustrated with herself, her appearance, her kids, her pain. She can't juggle life anymore. So everything is this huge emotion. So it's constant stress reactions. She rarely cooks for the family because she just can't do it. It's too much going on. And she feels burdened by that. She knows she should be able to do better, but she can't get it together. She relies on packaged foods that are, quote, healthier. And she just uses them to get by, basically, as a result. So this is our client.
Yeah. And
Do you see this?
we've seen this client many times. And
Yeah.
what do? You know? So from an osteopathic point of view, which is more the musculoskeletal aspect, people come to see me for sore knees and sore backs and that sort of thing. With this lady, I'm going to look for something obvious to start with. You know, was there a trip or a fall? Did she bang her knee? Is she doing something habitually that could be irritating her knee, like kneeling when she's changing diapers, or not changing diapers, when she's doing something with the kids, you know? Is there something mechanical that's causing the problem? And if so, we can use some exercises and maybe some manual therapy to help that person. But it doesn't sound to me like there's something that caused this, like an incident that caused it, or something that could be fixing it easily. So then I would be saying to her, well, let's step back and look at your lifestyle. Let's see what we can look at from a rest and recovery point of view, from a nutrition point of view, from a movement point of view, stress management point of view. You know, there's so many angles and ways in to help this lady. But for me, I think the starting point would be sleep and rest and recovery. What do you think?
I think that's wonderful. And I bet everybody that's listening, either now or on the replay, may say, really? Because she wants to lose weight. Why would we start with sleep and recovery? Well, she needs to start moving more. And like, why not start cutting out foods for her? Like, I know where you're going, yeah, but why would you start with that?
Well, you know, you can't exercise your way out of poor sleep, and you can't eat your way out of poor sleep. It's the foundation. You know, if you're not sleeping well, you cause so many other problems that a full organic diet with, you know, lots of leafy green vegetables and so on, you're just not even going to digest that properly because you're going to be in the stress response. And when you're in a stress response, your hormones change, your cortisol is high, and you end up not even, your guts don't work as well as they could. And so you can put in all the good food you want, you can do all the exercise you want, but if the sleep, rest, and recovery isn't there, then your body just can't handle it. So with her, I would look at this, the bedtime routine, and see what can we do to increase what we call, the fancy word for it, sleep hygiene. So is her room dark? Is it cool? Does she have noise that wakes her up? Do the kids wake her up? Is there a way that her, and assuming she has a partner, is a way that her partner can potentially take turns with that or something? Is there one kid that comes in and, you know, disturbs her at night, which is very common? Mm-hmm. And then in the morning, what's the morning routine like as well? Does she get up and have sunlight into her eyes? Because a lot of the time people get up, especially in the winter months, and it's screen time first. You know, they check their phone and so on. And that's not the way we're designed to be. We're designed to go to bed when it's getting dark, and we're designed to get up when it's getting light. Obviously, winter messes with that a little bit. But if we can create some sort of environment where in the evenings she dims the house down and in the morning she lightens the house up, that will help set the cortisol and melatonin, which are the two hormones that basically they get up and go, cortisol, and then the melatonin, the sleep hormone. And you mentioned something interesting in there with the coffee. The coffee in the morning, if you need coffee to get going, it's usually because your cortisol is low, and you need a boost, and you get some adrenaline going, and you get some, the caffeine buzz, and off you go. But you're really overriding a natural system with that. And to me, there's the clue. So she does that, and then that puts up her cortisol and gets her going. But then there's a crash, which means she has to eat because she needs some sugar. And then there's this yo-yoing all throughout the day of sugar high, sugar low, sugar high, sugar low. And she's messing with her blood sugars, which then that has a whole other cascade as well. So is that a good place to start with the
yes. And I think that, oh gosh, I'm gonna I don't want to branch. I could branch on that completely, and I want to stay kind of focused. But the coffee also with three, you have children as well, and mornings with children is not always smooth sailing. I mean, there are unpredictable moments literally all the time, especially with a middle schooler who's now going to be going off to school earlier. Then you got a gap, and the elementary school kids have to go off. So you're like one breakfast prep, and then the other two. Now, granted, she's not preparing meals. These kids are just basically, going and pouring cereal or whatever, Pop-Tart. But it's still these like surges in attention, which then also, if she's not managing stress, if her stress resilience extremely low, then you heighten it with this huge surge of adrenaline, this pump of cortisol on top of a depleted system. Yeah. With no food in the system, and she's running on coffee, and she's already got joint pain. You have this inflammatory cascade, not the calming fire, but the ongoing fire. There is no amount of corrective exercise that's going to intercept that. And I think that's where your brilliance comes in your model also in addressing all aspects. And myself also, you can't separate the nutrition, the lifestyle from the movement, because you can't get one without the other. Exactly. So I think that that's a really good starting point to talk about recovery and sleep as being the first pillars that need to be addressed, and just identifying basic sleep habits. You don't even need to get into supplementation and expensive interventions. It's just basic hygiene and awareness, and then overlapping some behaviors, because honestly, with someone who's that fried, if you start adding in so many different things, you're going to lose them. Right?
And you're going to add to their stress levels as well. And I feel like a lot of physical therapists, osteopaths in the UK as well, who are similar to physical therapists, chiropractors, it's like we go, well, that's out of our professional boundaries or whatever. We can't talk about nutrition. And it's like, well, you're practicing one hand behind your back then, because the joint pain is probably not really to do with the biomechanics. It's more likely to do with the inflammation. And I just want to sort of segue slightly, if we can, into the nutrition aspect. Yeah. So a lot of people say, well, what should I eat? And sure, then I am, transgressing into the world of nutrition, but I've taken training in nutrition, so I'm comfortable there. But you can also say, well, it's not really what you eat, it's how you eat.
Yes.
And we can say, okay, each aspect of our digestive system has a hierarchy. It starts with the teeth, right? And then it goes to the saliva and the way the tongue moves. Then it goes to the stomach, and then the small intestine, and then the colon, and finally out. But each one of those areas of our digestive system has a job. And it's like a demolition crew coming in to take down a building. You start with the building represents, let's say, a protein molecule, right? Either protein. And you start with maybe some explosives to level the building. And then if everything's still standing, you get a wrecking ball in there. And that's representing of the teeth. Okay, we need to go big interventions. Then we send in the guys with the pneumatic drills, right? And that represents what's happening in the stomach with the acid. They're taking it to pieces. Then we get into the small intestine, and we've got the guys with even smaller maybe little hand chisels, and they're sort of picking up bricks and so on. And finally they get to the blocks, the actual blocks of the building that it was made from, and they can take those away. But if you don't chew your food properly, and if you don't prepare your food properly, then you're missing out that first bit. So basically you're sending the guys with the little jackhammers to take down a huge building, and it just doesn't work properly. And so then you end up in the large intestine and small intestine as well, you end up with bacterial problems because they're being fed the food in a way that's not great for it. And so you end up with things like, you know, IBS or leaky gut or whatever, all these problems. And then people try and correct those with supplementation, but they don't go back and say, well, how are you eating and sort of how are you preparing your food first?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. And it's an excellent point that it begins with the mouth. And if you take this woman, this stressed mother who started her day with coffee, and she's trying to figure it out because she's heard intermittent fasting is helpful for her, and that's going to stimulate her metabolism. But then she starts eating and she can't stop. She never sits to have a meal. And whatever the meal is, it's quick food. Because another thing she comments on is, I just have no palate for, like, if you show me a salad with salmon and plenty of fresh foods, it's very off-putting versus having like a freezer pizza or something. Yeah. And understanding, like, what is it doing to her body to have, why is she having that constant demand for, she feels like she needs to snack all afternoon? Why can't she stop? What's going on there?
Well, that's mainly to do with our physiology, and it's driving her need for sugar and fat, because and salt. We need a little bit of salt to digest the sugar, so that's why we always want those two things happening. But when we have a low blood sugar, we have a drive for something quick, something easy, and so on. And that's also to do with the cortisol, which the cortisol is a sort of a signal to the body to release more sugar, wants more energy. And so she's constantly driving this system through stress of searching for sugar. And our sort of evolutionary biology has made us brilliant at looking for things that taste sweet, a little bit of salty, and a little bit of fat. That's what we need. Mm-hmm. But you know, historically, those things wouldn't have been readily available in a way that's synthetically put together in order to satiate our taste buds like that. You know, mm-hmm. These things we would have had to have hunted and gathered, and you know, got a little bit of salt from somewhere, and a little bit of fat from somewhere, and you know, look for the berries and so on to get the sugar. And so now we've short-circuited all that, and our primal brain is just so good at saying, I want that, I want the cookie. And unfortunately that's what happens. And then with energy levels, which are on her are already going to be down because of the sleep, your willpower to circumvent our natural evolutionary physiology, we can call it, is decreased. And so you can't, you know, like at night, it's always like, okay, yes, tomorrow's going to be a different day. And then in the morning, you feel pretty good. But then by the time you get to the evening, it's like all bets are off. You know, if there's chocolate in the house, there's cookies in the house, whatever, you're going to eat them. Mm-hmm. And that's basically our frontal cortex, which is part of our brain, which controls higher thought and reasoning, is a real energy suck. It needs a lot of energy to function. And so if we're tired and we don't have much energy to spare, the frontal cortex starts to not shut down, but it sort of doesn't work as well as it could do. And our decision making becomes more primal. And that's why we reach for the salty, fatty, sugary foods.
Wow. So that makes complete sense. So it's, again, it just circles back to the recovery, restoration, and sleep. And I think that's where sometimes people get stuck because they don't do it really well. Yeah. And then they never progress to the ability then to improve fitness, improve function, improve joint health. Yeah. They just kind of get stuck there, and they're always in this restoration and recovery. So they feel like that's now their new identity. And that might be a whole nother live to speak to, that you're a broken person, so you always need to be doing restorative exercise forever. And you probably find that in the population that you work with a lot with scoliosis, in that, no, you can undo that mindset, and you have so much capacity and so much functionality if you have the right inputs coming in.
Yeah.
And I think moms also, especially this mom, around this time frame of like early perimenopause, now you've like been running on fumes, you kind of feel like how am I going to undo this? And you have to peel back the layers and start with these basic habits. So we talked about the importance of understanding and implementing fundamentals of health for moms. But what about taking the lens of now how she talked about how she can't, one of the big burdens is that she can't prepare meals for the family.
Yeah.
She knows how, but she expresses just standing in the kitchen and you buy all these ingredients and just the amount of energy it requires to put together the meal, feed the meal,
Yeah.
collect the leftovers, put it in the refrigerator is daunting versus just putting something, a microwave dinner in, or saying just taking takeout or Instacart or whatever it is. She can't juggle that. And how do you introduce the role, or is it wise to introduce the role of role model as mom to break this cycle of like, because now the kids are learning this is normal.
Well, yeah. So I mentioned this when we chatted before, but I want to say that you don't need to worry about this. Like, people will be like, what? Well, so my experience was my mum was, I was born in the 70s, so I grew up in the 80s, and everything was, convenience food.
Yeah.
She's diabetic and overweight, and that's the product, I think, of the lifestyle of that.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters and myself, we're not. We went the other way. And so, yes, there is going to be a certain role modeling that happens, but at the same time, your children are not, little clones of you. They have a mind, and they can go off and do something completely different. So I think to take the stress away from the mothers, to say, look, what you're doing, the example you're leading, it's okay. The kids won't necessarily copy you, exactly. But at the same time, a certain educational aspect to it, I think, is important to show the kids there are other options, but not too much. I read this really good book called "It's Not About the Broccoli."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've read it.
No, but I'm going to now.
And it talks about eating different picky eaters, and my ex-wife and I are pretty clean. We're very educated, and even she actually runs an organic farm and eats all the produce off the farm.
Wow.
Our two kids, picky eaters. Yeah, it's a real problem. So then you go online and you see Instagrammers, influencers saying, oh, you just got to be the role model for the kids. They'll do what you do. These people do not have children. Children do whatever they want to do. But I read this book, Not About the Broccoli, and it says the biggest mistake you can make is trying to tell your kids the scientific or the health reasons they should be eating. And I went through the book and I'd made every single mistake. I made the fussy kids by being a health conscious parent. So I was like, okay, I'll accept responsibility there. And then shifting it to say, well, for example, in this book is to say, look, let's not say you've got to eat broccoli because broccoli got this in it and it's going to do this for your guts and so on. You say, hey, you just need to eat like a traffic light. Let's have some green foods, some red foods, and a little bit of white foods, and don't even mention the difference between the foods. And I thought that was such an easy do it. And then what we did with our kids was we try and get them to choose the red foods. So it could be ketchup, right? That's a red food, that's allowed. But over a time we say, well, okay, ketchup's not a red food anymore. You can't have that one. So let's try another red food. And they don't equate the changes that you slowly implement with health. They just say, okay, well, I've had my red food. I get to choose the red foods, and it gives them a bit of power. So going back to the question about her being a role model, I don't think she needs to worry too much. I think she just needs to be a guide, to provide the kids with, she needs to provide the kids with the options for healthy food, for sure. But if they're fussy and they kick back, not to fight it too much, just take a step back and say, okay, well, we need to look at the days, we need to look at the weeks, we need to look at the months. And, if the kid hasn't eaten any vegetables for a week, okay, well, maybe you need to regroup. If they haven't eaten any vegetables for a month, well, then we've got a problem. But it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. It's going to add stress.
I think that's so wonderful. And man, my lens has shifted on that. I mean, with two sets of twins, it's a juggle. And I completely agree with you. And I got your response, but I wanted you to say that because it is so important that the whole idea is that there is she has the capacity to do it if she chooses. Because I also find in working with moms that they say, my kids will never eat it, so I'm not going to make it. And then they don't end up eating it. They won't even buy the greens. They won't even bother with the garden. They won't do that because it's now food is so expensive, and they're not just going to cook for one. And if the whole family, sometimes it's the husband doesn't eat it or the partner doesn't eat it, and then it becomes an issue. And so, yeah, it's that could be a whole discussion of itself. But just speaking to that one point, to take that burden off of necessarily, unless you want that role as role model. Okay, I'll give one more question because I want to respect your time. If you think about the chronic pain this mom is experiencing, and if she starts to implement changes, obviously, like you and I both have phases that will carry people through. It's not that she's going to be in restoration forever.
Yeah.
But if she's starting to implement these strategies, and she's fairly consistent, at least 80% of the time, how soon, this is everybody's question mark, right? How soon can she start to feel results, especially just from the pain perspective, the pain in the body, barring that there's no major orthopedic injury? It's just like dehydrated tissue, underuse, poor mechanics, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I like to sort of think of it as wear and repair, in that when you walk around and your knee, for example, the kneecap does move up and down against the two leg bones, and there is a wearing, but at night when you rest, it repairs. And then sometimes if you're overdoing it, people call it overtraining or whatever, the wearing is quicker than the repairing. But if you're in a state of inflammation, that wearing and repairing doesn't happen at all. And this is what could be happening with her. So if we implement the sleep, like you say, 80% of the time, she gets it right most days. We implement, or we didn't talk about hydration, but we implement nutritional sort of some big rocks, we can call them, right? So we're sort of talking about maybe we have the coffee discussion with her, maybe we don't, but definitely put some hydration in there, some more water, trying to get some decent vegetables in there to help her digestive system, and the inflammation goes down. I think we can see changes very quickly. I mean, it's surprising. I've had people with back pain just change what they eat, and the next week they don't have any back pain. But on the flip side, I've also had people who take a lot longer. The gut does take a bit of time to change. The cellular turnover in the actual digestive system is about 4 days, so it changes quite quickly. But sometimes the body takes a little bit longer to catch up for whatever reason it is, and that's usually to do with the way the person processes stress. So it could be as quick as a week, or it could be 4 weeks.
That's so wonderful and so empowering too, that we can make such a dent. I can say that 100% certainty that this woman would not be a good fit for modern medicine's approach in most instances, because she can control these factors most definitely, and she doesn't need a medication, anti-inflammatory drugs or any sort. She has all the tools she needs. It's a matter of implementing the habits. And I think that's where we need to look at lifestyle medicine a lot more for these kind of cases where it just comes from depletion, lifestyle habits, and so on.
Exactly.
So can you tell everybody where they can find you and your work and the brilliance behind your projects?
Sure. Yeah, it's 3 things that I do. I help people with back pain, help people with scoliosis, and I help people with health issues with lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine includes nutrition, biomechanics, sleep and recovery, stress management, community, and avoiding toxic substances. That's the sort of the 6 overarching principles. But I put those principles into everything. So if you come with back pain, you're getting those 6 principles. If you come with scoliosis, you're getting those 6 principles. If you come with, some high cholesterol, high blood pressure, fatigue, something like that, you're getting those 6 principles. And people can find me on my Instagram, obviously, and edpadget.com is my website.
That's so wonderful. And of course, I'll link it, in stories today and in the post. But I so appreciate you and your work, and it's such a pleasure to speak to you, at least virtually here. And I followed you for a long time, so thank you so much for your time and your brilliant mind contributing to this case today. And hopefully, maybe we can do it again in the future. I'd
love to. I think we can perhaps do a different case or something and come at a different angle. But this has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Have a good rest of the day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.